There are several amazing birds alive today, like the ostrich, the condor, and the falcon. But several extinct birds are much more unique and extraordinary than the ones alive today, like the dodo bird, the moa, the elephant bird, and the great auk. There's something that all these have in common, though. They went extinct during the Common Era. The Common Era, or CE, is from the year 1 to now, basically 2024 years ago. Before that is BCE, before the Common Era. These four birds' extinctions are part of the sixth mass extinction in the history of life, the Holocene extinction. The Holocene epoch is the second epoch of the Quaternary, which lasted from 11,700 years ago until the present. The main cause for this extinction is humans, who have killed off all four of these extraordinary birds. The Rhaphis cucullatus, commonly referred to as the dodo bird, is a flightless pigeon within the subfamily Rhaphinae, alongside its closest relative, the Rodriguez solitaire. The dodo lived on the island of Mauritius, which is located east of Madagascar in the Indian Ocean. Mauritius is part of the Mascarena Islands, alongside Reunion and Rodriguez, Rodriguez being where the Rodriguez solitaire lived. The dodo's closest living relative is the Nicobar pigeon that inhabits the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, as well as India and Indonesia. People might think that since the dodo is a recently extinct creature, we know a lot about them, but it's quite the opposite. Most of our knowledge of dodos comes from artwork and journal entries. The fossil evidence of the dodo is mainly in a swamp on the island, but the remains that come from there are extremely fragmentary. The dodo could have stood anywhere from 2 to 2.5 feet and could have weighed as much as 59 pounds. The color of the dodo was most likely brownish gray, as that's what we see in most depictions of the dodo from the 1600s. The dodo was for a long time depicted as an obese, stupid, and clumsy bird, but now we know that the dodo was pretty intelligent based on its brain-to-body ratio, and we know that it was slimmer. Long before any humans had arrived in Mauritius, the dodo had evolved traits to thrive in its ecosystem where it had an ample supply of food and no natural predators. It evolved traits such as being flightless and laying very small clutches of eggs. What humans viewed as stupidity was the result of the dodo having no natural predators, so it had no instincts to tell it to run from danger. When the Dutch eventually arrived in 1598, they saw not a beautiful creature worth protecting, but an easy meal, and a creature to hunt for sport. Humans did no favors to the dodo population, but another reason for the dodo's extinction was the invasive species they had brought, like macaques and pigs. After 64 years of the dodo's dwindling population, the last dodo took its final breath in 1662. One of the greatest mysteries of the dodo was the white dodo. There have been several paintings and depictions of a white dodo on the nearby island of Reunion. People even wrote about seeing a white bird on this island. Later it was found out that most of the white dodo paintings had been inspired from one, where the artist did not base his dodo's colors in reality. As for the written sightings of the white bird, well, that was most likely the extinct Reunion ibis. The dodo was a very odd bird. It seems like no other, so people had a hard time classifying it. Some said it was an ostrich, or maybe even an albatross. But eventually, in 1842, a Danish zoologist, Johannes Theodor Reinhardt, said it was a ground pigeon. This idea was viewed as incorrect for a long time, but now we know they were, in fact, pigeons. Another flightless bird that lived on an island was the moa. For 80 million years, New Zealand had been isolated from the rest of the world. These conditions allow creatures to evolve into wildly strange versions of their former selves. The moa is a case of this. Contrary to popular belief, the moa isn't a singular species, but a whole group called the Dinornithiformes that contain a total of 9 species. The North Island giant moa, the South Island giant moa, the bush moa, the eastern moa, the broad-billed moa, the heavy-footed moa, Mantell's moa, the crested moa, and the upland moa. The moa was an ostrich-like creature that lived around halfway through the Cenozoic and died out in 1445. The largest moa could get up to 12 feet tall, over twice the height of the average human being. It fed on low trees and bushes and employed the help of gastroliths, also known as gizzard stones, to help them digest food, something that the dodo bird also did. The gastroliths help grind up tough plants, which makes it easier and quicker for the stomach to digest it. The moas had large gaps in sizes within species. This could be a result of sexual dimorphism, with females being larger, or possibly an indicator of subspecies. The moa's main natural predator was the Haas seagull. a giant bird native to the South Island of New Zealand. The moas were thriving in their ecosystem, with their population being somewhere between 58,000 and 2 million. But as with every animal on this list, the downfall began with the arrival of humans, specifically the Polynesians. When the Polynesians arrived in the early 1300s, they began hunting moas and also began destroying the moa's habitat. The overhunting became too much for the moas to bear, and by 1445, all the moas had been gone. The humans didn't just affect the moa, as when you take out an integral part of an ecosystem, it starts to crumble, and the moas took the Haas eagle down with them. The lack of their primary food source killed off the Haas eagle. Since the 1700s, several moa sightings have been reported, but none are likely valid. Even if the moa survived after the 1400s, it almost definitely would have gone extinct by the 19th or 20th centuries. All modern-day penguins live in the southern hemisphere, but 200 years ago, penguins roamed the Arctic. The great auk, or Penguinus impanus, was the last penguin to live in the Arctic, and is the only true penguin. The modern-day penguins stole the name penguin from the great auk, which is within the Alcidae family, not at all closely related to modern-day penguins. The great auk lived on the east coast of North America, Greenland, Iceland, the British Isles, and some parts of Western Europe. Before Europeans arrived, the Native Americans arrived and hunted and worshipped the great auk. Some great auks were even buried with the Native Americans, though the main people who drove them to extinction were the Europeans, as when they arrived, fishermen used the great auk as bait and hunted them for their coveted meat. They were driven to extinction when the great auk's down started being used for pillows, which were in very high demand. The great auk's wide range is deceiving because few nesting sites are known. The great auk would mate for life, as do many birds today. The females would then lay a single egg on bare rock, without a nest. Even after the hatchling's departure from the nest, the parents would still care for it. The great auk would live in rocky islands far from shore, so it could avoid predators, which it didn't have the means to protect itself from. The mainly aquatic lifestyle of this creature was also the reason they lived further from shore. As are modern-day penguins, the great auk was flightless, black and white, as well as being a mostly aquatic bird. The fact they are not related makes this a great example of convergent evolution, where two creatures or groups evolved traits independently, like how both mammals and birds evolved flight. The great auk's appearance is more known than the other creatures on this list because they went extinct in the 1800s, and there are several records of people seeing it, as well as a good amount of specimens. The great auk had a black back and face and a white belly, but during the summer months they would have had a patch of white feathers above their eyes, which they lacked during the winter. They had a hooked beak like raptors or terror birds. These are pretty small birds, being only 11 pounds and getting as tall as a yard. The great auk was only left in the British Isles and Iceland around the 1700s to 1800s. Because of the constant hunting and dwindling populations of the great auk, the United Kingdom decided to protect them, but they still went extinct, with the last two being killed on the coast of Iceland on June 3, 1844. You might think the largest bird ever is something like a condor or an albatross or maybe the prehistoric terror birds, but no. The largest bird to ever exist was the Aepyornis maximus, also known as the elephant bird, solely because they were as massive as an elephant, in terms of volume, not weight. The elephant birds didn't just contain a single species, but it was a whole group. The Aepyornithiformes, with the Aepyornis maximus, Aepyornis hildebrandt, and Mullornis modestus. The elephant birds were endemic to Madagascar, meaning it's the only place they inhabited, and animals on islands are more vulnerable to extinction. The Aepyornis hildebrandt were most likely grazers, while the other two species, A. maximus and M. modestus, were browsers, which means they fed on low trees. The A. maximus weighed up to a ton, which is much larger than several pterosaurs and all birds. These were flightless paleognaths, alongside many flightless birds like emus, cassowaries, ostriches, kiwis, and moas, which are the only other extinct group in the Paleognathai. Several eggs have been discovered in Western Australia, but these are likely to be from floating across the Indian Ocean from Madagascar. When humans arrived in Madagascar, they wreaked havoc on the land, starting fires to burn down forest so they could have room for pastures and farms. This was detrimental to the elephant birds, which had lived all over Madagascar during the time. The main cause of their extinction were the diseases that humans brought, which led to their deaths as they fell into the depths of history because of humans. The sad stories of these creatures' extinctions show how humans can decimate another creature so swiftly. It's almost as if we have too much power. Humans' ignorance and lack of appreciation for life killed these creatures, and we can't take it back.